Hello, and welcome to the 2020 Human Trafficking Academy training program. We're so excited to have you join us. Today's session that I'm going to be recording for you introduces some ideas about adult learning theory and how you might want to use this information to design your teaching sessions. We're going to delve into the way that we each learn and examine how we might be able to use that knowledge to create better learning opportunities for others. Before we begin, I wanted to tell you a story about me. My name is Sue Farrell. I'm the Director of Continuing and Professional Development at the MGH IHP, and again, I welcome you to this course. I myself consider myself to be a lifelong learner, and so I'm always engaged in understanding better how it is that I learn best and where I can try to improve my skills. I live just outside of Boston, and I have a small yard. It's sufficiently large enough to challenge me and to be fun, but small enough that I can manage it myself. My yard is very small, and so I am able to mow the lawn with a push-hand lawnmower. I noticed several years ago that the blades on the lawnmower seemed to be pretty dull. I was basically walking back and forth across the lawn, pushing the grass down, but not really cutting anything. So I looked online and Googled, as we all frequently do, to figure out a way to sharpen the lawnmower blades on my lawnmower. And I ran across an advertisement that said, "Sharpen your real blades like a real man." And that was certainly a challenge to me if I'd ever seen one. And so I ordered a small kit online to help me to figure out how to sharpen the blades on my lawnmower. When it arrived, it came in a small little box that had some instructions. It had a nice little paintbrush. It had some metal tools that looked sort of like wrenches, and then it had a big container of some silvery goop. So I looked at the instructions myself one morning, thinking that I would sharpen the blades and be able to cut my very small lawn before the projected rain started. I was really thrilled with this silvery stuff that seemed like a mixture of quicksand and paint. And so I quickly glanced through the instructions, which were written in English, Spanish, German, and French, tossed them to the side after I glanced at some of the visual images that were on the instructions, and quickly got to work using these tools to take the wheels off of my lawnmower, to try to paint this silvery goop all over the blades, and then to rotate the blades with the intention of sharpening them. Well, I'll let you know that I did succeed in spreading silvery goop all over myself and the patio in the backyard, but didn't get very far in terms of sharpening the blades. My younger daughter, who was sitting at the picnic table watching me and feeding me cookies, said to me after some time, "You know, maybe it would be less messy if you read the instructions and figured out how to do this properly." So after much back and forth, my daughter read the instructions to me, and I was able eventually to sharpen the blades and get the grass cut just before the rain started. So I'll leave you with that story about me and ask you to think about, well, what's going on here with Sue? What type of a learner must she be? The reason that that story is of interest is because it leads us into the purpose for today's session. We want to have an opportunity to each individually explore our own learning and what we can take from that understanding. We want to be able to use our own experiences as well as some learning theory that I'm going to explain to you in order to apply that information in your teaching sessions. We're also going to very briefly review 6 steps in curriculum design that I hope you'll find helpful as you're thinking about what your learners' needs are and how best to address those needs in your learning and teaching sessions. Now, as you know, part of the pre-work that we asked you to complete was your own self-assessment of your learning styles. We gave you an opportunity to answer some questions as part of a mini Kolb learning style inventory. We hope that you found this to be interesting, and you should have been able to use your scores to map them onto a grid that looks something like this. You'll see that when you map that information onto the grid, it results in something that looks sort of like a diamond or a kite. I'm going to explain, hopefully, what that means for you. This learning style inventory is based on the research of David Kolb, who researched how adults learn based on their experiences. His theory was that we all create new knowledge through first having an experience and then transforming that experience in a way that creates new knowledge for us. He suggested that the way that we prefer to create new experiences and to acquire new information may differ. Some of us may prefer to have an experience that feels very concrete, that we learn by experiencing through being very involved in some activity. Others of us prefer to have an experience through abstract conceptualization, such that we want to sit quietly by ourselves and think about new information before we create our own new learning from it. So on this vertical axis, all of us fall in some place as desiring a concrete experience or having quiet, abstract thinking time as a way for us to have a new experience. Either way, David Kolb suggests that we transform that experience into our own new knowledge in different ways. Some of us like to transform this information through reflective observation. We want to reflect on how that information or that experience makes us feel. What is it that we're emotionally reacting to? And how can we understand that reaction and our reflections as we use this new knowledge to move forward? Others of us are on the other side of the horizontal axis that you see here, and we prefer active experimentation. We want to take the experience that we've had and we want to actively start using it and doing something so that we can learn by actually engaging in the process that we've just experienced. We all fall in different places here. We all have the capacity to acquire new experiences and transform them in different ways, in different environments. But the reason that this information may be helpful to us as teachers is that if you think back on certain learning experiences, there may have been times when you were really present in the learning. You were completely tuned in. Whatever was happening was truly making an opportunity for you to learn for yourself. And those are some of our best learning experiences. And we're going to think about those some more during the live session that we have. In contrast, unfortunately, all of us have probably also had learning experiences in which it was just missing the mark for us. Regardless of what it was, we were tuned out. It was really hard for us to take anything away from that experience. And so if we think back and forth about the way that we tend to like to learn, we can start to examine how other people learn and think about how we can expand our toolbox as teachers to be the most effective teachers. Kolb theorizes that if we're able to provide a variety of opportunities for learners, recognizing that learners learn in different ways, we may not always be able to create an opportunity that fits with every learner's style, but through a variety of teaching experiences, we can support a variety of learners to have the most effective learning. Specifically, if we're able to allow our learners to move in a sequential order around this cycle that you see here, we can allow people an opportunity to have an experience, to reflect on what that experience means for them, to actually think about how the new knowledge that you're offering them fits into the way that they're going to act differently, and then offering them a safe opportunity to practice that new knowledge in a way that fits for them. Now, we know that we can't be everything to everyone, but as a group working together to create a teaching experience for a variety of learners, you can probably brainstorm a variety of activities that will make that learning experience most effective. And that's what you'll be doing in workshop number 4 when you work together in your small groups. I'd like to pause there and allow you some time to think about the questions that came with this pre-recording. What do you understand about your own learning style results? What things surprised you? How do you imagine that this knowledge could help you to be a better teacher? You can stop the video now and think on your own a little bit, and then we'll come back together. Finally, I'd like to end this pre-recording by reviewing the 6 steps in curriculum design that we frequently use as outlined here. Curriculum Development for Medical Education was written by Kern several years ago. It outlines 6 very easy and logical steps to think about as you're designing either a curriculum that lasts for months or a teaching session that lasts for 2 hours. The first steps, 1 and 2, are those that involve understanding the needs of your learners. It's hard to really start a teaching session if you don't know the gap that you're trying to address and teach your learners. So this information helps you to characterize the problem that you're going to be addressing through your teaching session. The information allows you to measure the gap and also to define the outcomes that you're trying to achieve for your learners so that they know where they're going with you during the teaching session. It also helps you to design the teaching activities that are most effective for helping your learners bridge that gap. The third step in Kern's curriculum design framework is outlining your goals and objectives. I'm sure that many of you have heard the term goals and objectives together as though they mean the same thing, but they really don't. If I offer you an opportunity to take a look at this picture of my younger daughter, and I ask you the question, what do you think are the goals of this particular activity? Take a moment and see what you might think. In contrast, if I ask you now to write down what you think the objectives of this activity are your lists different from each other? Goals versus objectives are actually very different. Goals are usually overall purposes of the curriculum or the teaching experience. They're often very broad and general. They may be difficult to measure because they may involve some subjectivity. In contrast, objectives usually tell learners exactly what they need to accomplish in order to achieve the learning objective that you have set out for them. Therefore, objectives are usually very specific and they can be behaviorally anchored so that you can measure how well your learners have achieved the objectives. If we go back to my daughter, up on this piece of furniture, we might say, oh, the goals of doing this are to be flexible, maybe to have fun. The objectives might be a little bit more challenging and stepwise to achieve. First of all, step up on the piece of furniture, balance on 2 feet, lean backwards so that you can see the couch and then be able to hold yourself up with your hands. Make sure that you arch your body into a complete arch, and then please turn your head toward the camera and smile. I hope you see the difference between goals and objectives. It's important for you to be able to outline those for your learners so that they're able to follow where you're going. We'll be working on steps 4 and 5 in our live session together, where we're going to have an opportunity for you to brainstorm how you're going to create your teaching sessions. But finally, step 6 is as important because you want to know that your effort has been effective in achieving the learning that was important for your learners. And so how will you evaluate whether they have achieved your objectives? Specifically, how do you know that your learners have learned new knowledge? How do you know that they're going to be able to understand that knowledge in order to apply it in their own work and their own lives? And will they be able to make a change in their behavior that makes a difference for their patients and clients in your organization? We'll talk a little bit about evaluation and feedback as we get ready for your final workshop on Sunday. Lastly, I'd like you to take a look at the information that you received related to the Kolb Learning Style Inventory. You'll probably see that there's a PDF that we have offered for you that describes specific learning types. Please take this information as an opportunity to read some background, but don't feel pigeonholed into a certain category. We all learn differently at different times in our lives and in different circumstances. It's the knowledge about how we learn differently that's most useful. It's not the labeling that we want you to take away from this experience. Finally, when we get together on our live session, we're going to ask you to consider, as you prepare for workshop 4, what is the relationship between the ways that people work and how we as a group can teach most effectively? What's important to know in advance when we're teaching so that we're prepared to address that knowledge gap for our learners? And finally, how will we know that our learners are really learning what we set out to learn together? I hope you found this pre-recording helpful. We'll go over some of the very important points and do some activities together when we meet in our live session, and I look forward to meeting you together.